In light of atrocities committed by ICE in the US under Trump's administration, the popularity of a certain red hat is once again circulating amidst the fiber arts community. A $5 knitted pattern posted by Needle and Skein, a small yarn shop based in Minnesota, with a description that writes, "In the 1940s, Norwegians made and wore red pointed hats with a tassel as a form of visual protest against Nazi occupation of their country. Within 2 years, the Nazis made these protest hats illegal and punishable by law to wear, make, or distribute. As purveyors of traditional craft, we felt it appropriate to revisit this design. All proceeds from the sale of this pattern go to local immigrant aid organizations who will distribute the funds to those impacted by the actions of ICE." Phrygian caps predate the Norwegian movement as well. They were worn during the French Revolution, hence the mascot for the 2024 Olympics hosted in Paris, as well as the American Revolution, and even in ancient Rome worn by emancipated slaves. Needle and Skein also have a pattern for a crocheted version of this hat being sold at the same price. Before we start, let me know in the comments whether you've made this hat, whether you've heard of it, and if you did, what it means to you. Soon after this pattern was shared to me in my own crafting network, I came across a post regarding the hat by Knit Designs by Tien on Instagram, where she writes, "Yes, the red hat is performative. I don't trust y'all. Y'all are not safe, no matter how many bracelets you make or hat you knit, because the same people with the pink hats voted for this. Check the numbers." This post prompted me to gather a few perspectives regarding the activism tied to this hat, and I felt it was important to discuss them here with you guys. I take no issue with people making this hat. Just to be clear, the purpose of this video is not to declare what's right and what's wrong, or to police anybody's capacity for or method of activism. I want to speak from several perspectives, so hopefully we can better see eye to eye, and maybe spark some ideas on how we can further lend a helping hand without infighting. The biggest problem with the red hat / yarn is that this is the first and only time many have said anything about what's going on. You've been quiet until it's time to capitalize. Where were you for Keith? Well, he was black, so who care, right? I know most of you won't know who this is. Google is right there, don't comment asking me. But these were the good whites shot, so you can sympathize and empathize because you can see yourself in them, right? They are relatable. Now you see it because before you couldn't see color. So this is the first and only time many have said anything about what's going on. In the past year, there's been around 40 ICE-related deaths. In January of this year, Renee Good and Alex Preddy became two very prominently known white victims. The hat only made a reappearance after these two distinct tragedies, which can make it feel as if a resistance is only worth organizing once white lives are also at stake. All the while, lots of people don't even know the names of POC victims. Keith Porter, who Tien is talking about in her post, was a black man shot outside of his home by an off-duty ICE officer. He had 2 young daughters, and there was very little media coverage about his death. Miguel Angel Garcia Medina was a Mexican man. He was shot back in September 29th at age 31 outside an ICE field office in Dallas, leaving his wife behind with 3 children. And when it's not shootings, people of color were losing their lives in hospitals after neglected health issues in detainment that were likely caused by or escalated by their living conditions there. Luis Beltran Yanez Cruz from Honduras died under ICE custody on January 6th of this year at age 68. Delvin Francisco Rodriguez from Nicaragua also died in custody back in December 14th at age 39. Just this year, there's been 9 reported ICE deaths, and chances are by the time this video comes out, there could be more. And yet we mostly hear about 2 of them. So to people of color, this is not only an "I told you so," it's also a "now, really?" I often think back to 2020 when East Asians were being killed and assaulted because of COVID, and only now are people finding compassion for their Asian peers, showing an appreciation for Chinese culture now that China is trending. Where were you all this time? Why now? Autumn, the owner of Size Inclusive Collective, does a much better job at explaining this viewpoint than me, so I'm gonna go ahead and read a post of hers that she posted to her Instagram, and she titles it, "It's Not About the Hat Mostly." I want to touch on something I've been seeing as people respond to the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. This isn't about saying they don't deserve grief, outrage, or care, because they absolutely do. The frustration many BIPOC folks are expressing isn't about who is being mourned, but about the pattern of response. For years, people, mostly black, brown, indigenous, and undocumented, have been killed by immigration enforcement with little public attention, little creative activism, and little sustained outrage. So when 2 white people are killed, and there's suddenly a surge of organizing, art, handmade activism, and "this finally woke me up" moments, that contrast can hurt. Not because caring now is wrong, but because selective urgency sends a message, even when unintentional. This is literally why we've been talking about Black Lives Matter. If this has been your tipping point, I'm asking you to care, especially when the victims aren't white, the stories aren't viral, and there's no clear way to respond. So let's talk about what Autumn means by this pattern of response, and I think this is twofold. Firstly, it refers to past moments in history wherein visual solidarity had little impact on social justice movements as a whole. Namely, the pink hats worn by feminist protesters in 2017. So they were known as pussy hats, and they symbolized female solidarity in protest against Trump running for office, aiming to reclaim this quote of his about grabbing women by the pussy. Over 100,000 free digital patterns were distributed, countless women took to the streets, creating this sea of pink, yet it did not prevent the overturning of Roe v. Wade or the election of Trump, because a pink hat does not equal a vote. Looking the part does not promise anything in practice. Do not comment here about the hat raising money. Go post that on your page. It's giving pink hat performative, because we see how y'all voted. Pink hat activism equals overturning of Roe. It's time to do the real work and stop play acting. This photo is so powerful because look at the focus. The pink hats are there to be performative and take pics to post, not do the actual work. And the image is the Women's March, and in the photo we see 3 white women wearing the pussy hats, and they're standing at an elevation. All 3 of them are using their phones, supposedly documenting their presence at the protest. Meanwhile, on the ground is a woman of color who seems a lot more actively engaged in the protest, and she has a sign that reads, "Don't forget, white women voted for Trump." Another pattern of response is this too late timing. So the bracelet that Tian refers to are the blue bracelets, and this was a visual campaign basically to flag that you voted for Kamala and not Trump. And this was a visual campaign started after Trump's election. So it gives rise to the suspicion that these symbols are not there in the name of solidarity, but more in the name of clearing one's own name. Communicating perhaps that bad things are happening, but I don't take any responsibility. I'm not part of the problem. The problem is white women still refuse to change our voting habits. More white women voted for Trump last year than they did in 2016. So until we actually change, yes, this is performative. Making hats and sparky signs doesn't mean anything if we refuse to stop voting for Republicans, which leads to the next sub-argument of visual symbols impeding further action. So I understand that the pattern is raising funds. That's fantastic. There's still this further concern that making the pattern is making individuals feel validated enough, which is causing this much needed rage and urge for action to dissipate before they do something further. Still conversations to be had at the dinner table, protests to be joined, and money, some of which was spent on yarn to make this hat that can still be donated to other resistance organizations.
I would rather take the money that I would spend on a pattern and red yarn and donate it directly to mutual aid organizations I know and trust.
It makes me think back to Blackout Tuesday. Everybody was posting black squares, and it was supposed to be a social media strike, and it was a bit of a disaster and ended up achieving the exact opposite, because when you searched up the hashtag BLM or similar, instead of seeing useful infographics or links to fundraisers, instead of seeing videos created by Black activists, all you would see were these black squares.
It's yet another way for liberals to virtue signal that they're a safe space without really having to go out of their way to do anything exceptionally radical.
I want to real quick say that I think a rise in anti-intellectualism is a big reason as to why this even needs to be spelled out and why we have so much infighting. I feel like it's a hidden nuance that the hat is an add-on, and it should still be encouraged to do more. And before y'all call me ableist, it is also a hidden nuance that obviously that doesn't apply for people who are low income, people with disabilities who don't have the means to do anything further. Just looking back to the Pussy Hats, it was an initiative started by Krista Sue and Jana Zweiman, and at the time, Zweiman was recovering from injury. She physically could not go to protests, and she wanted a way to be there in spirit. That hat was a last resort, not a first priority. It was not the be-all, end-all that excuses a lack of further action when you still have the resources to do more. Like, I think those are things that go without saying, but we've lost so much literacy and critical thinking skills that it has to be spelled out. We don't even get to the core of the conversation without starting an argument. There's this one misunderstanding that when we're trying to tell each other that the hats alone are not enough, it's getting misinterpreted as you are not allowed to make the hat. Portia Noor writes on Threads, "A lot of y'all want resistance merch because that's where your work begins and ends, hoping someone sees you as a good one because they can see a safety pin, bracelet, hat, whatever. Those accessories mean nothing without some actual work behind them, and too many of y'all will crumble and get upset because of this post. In the time it'll take you to get upset and likely end up in my comment section, you could have called your local food bank and asked what they need." The Kids Call Me Ames writes, "Fellow white women, Nobody is telling us not to crochet or bake or draw freaking birds or whatever. They're telling us not to do it performatively. And definitely, for fuck's sake, don't come here crying that you're being bullied just because nobody is thanking you or congratulating you on your activism. It's not wasting anyone's time to call you out, but you are wasting Black women's time when you keep making them have to. This is why we're not beating the allegations. So the bird that Ames is referring to is the rebel loon, and it's an illustration that combines the Minnesota state bird with the Star Wars alliance symbol.
The latest resistance merch is rebel birds. It's no different than the pink pussy hats. It's no different than the blue bracelet. It's a piece of merch that somebody can wear that indicates that they are for the resistance and they're there for the fight. And I beg of you all to knock it the fuck off. If you truly want to be seen and believed as somebody who is here for the resistance, number one, let go of the attitude when somebody tells you that this ain't it. Why are you so offended that your arts and crafts project isn't enough for where we're at right now?
And this makes me think of the Hunger Games Mockingjay pin. The Mockingjay becomes a symbol of uprising. Something that also happened is that in the capital that the districts were trying to overthrow, wealthy residents were also wearing the Mockingjay as a fashion trend without understanding the history or meaning behind it. This is why I said Hunger Games should be taught in schools. Another thing this rebel bird is being criticized for, by the way, is being once again centered around whiteness. White individuals who want to flag their allyship.
When something horrendous happens, especially as of late, white women want to come up with some sort of new arts and craft to indicate that they are one of the good ones, that they're there for the resistance.
Is the Minnesota Rebel Loon protest art? Yes and no. Is it going to do what the artist intended? Yes and no. The issue here lies not with the artist's intent, but with the audience and current white perception of activism. For some, especially in Minnesota, it will provide a sense of solidarity and strength. Again, mostly for white people because we lack true community. So many people are missing the point that people are making in terms of hats. If all you do is knit the hat, you're not protesting, you're just knitting a hat. You have to do something beyond just knitting the hat. Trying to profit off the murder and kidnapping of primarily BIPOC people is wrong. It's tone deaf, just like the blue bracelets. You've missed the entire point of fiber arts as an act of resistance. No one is shaming knitters. Jesus fucking Christ, listen. Knit all you want, but just knitting does jack if you aren't doing something with it, and knitting Liam's bunny hat is gross. I'm tired of seeing people who don't get it whine and complain and act like victims. If you are doing shit besides just knitting, then the posts aren't about you, so stop making it about you. Like, these are implied, and I am exasperated on behalf of these women that they even have to point that out. And the reason why they have to is because a lot of people are responding to this criticism, responding to this call for further action by kind of citing themselves as the exception. A few comments under Tian's original post were like, I knitted the hat and I protested and I donated. That's great, that's fantastic. And then Tian's not talking about you. And there's also people saying, I'm low income, I'm disabled, all I can do is knit the hat. Also, then it's not about you. Not all people, not all men, not all X and Y. It is low-key a straw man to assume somebody else's logical fallacy as soon as they don't lay out every single rule and exception. It's implied. This video is another day, but let me say for now, when somebody is talking about a problematic, widespread tendency, pussy hats didn't stop Trump. Blue bracelets didn't stop Trump. Wearing merch in the past has not been effective enough to stop the US from electing a conservative president. That is factual. Even if you didn't contribute to the realization of that thing, doesn't mean it is untrue. Being unable to relate to some form of frustration or skepticism or feelings of unfairness means you're likely in a position of privilege, and we need to be able to recognize that in order to move forward. If your brown friend is complaining that they keep getting pulled aside for routine checks at airports, if your female friends are saying they don't feel safe in doctor's offices, if your black friends are saying they don't trust anyone wearing the red hat, and you can't relate to that, there are probably identity politics at play as to why you cannot, which really legitimizes what Tian is trying to say. It not being about allyship, but just wanting to prove yourself correct. And I totally get it. I feel a huge sense of pride when coming home from a protest or having a successful conversation with someone where I was able to get them to see differently. That is exhausting work, and I want a cookie for that. But there's a time and place. Think of how many times Tian must have been interrupted, spoken over, met with the desire to argue rather than to have a conversation in order to reach the viewpoint that she has. The next sub-argument is the commercialization of social justice.
If the only thing that you're doing is creating merch as part of the resistance, then you were not part of the resistance. You were somebody trying to capitalize. You all keep cycling through different things since 2016 because instead of doing something, you want to keep making art that you can capitalize off of and think that it makes you show that you are safe.
So about the blue bunny hat and Liam. On January 20th this year, a 5-year-old was kidnapped by immigration agents in Minneapolis. He's a preschooler. He had just come home from preschool. His name is Liam Conejo Ramos, and he was only recently freed from detainment. A photo of him getting detained went viral where he was wearing this blue hat with bunny ears. So this hat became a symbol attesting to Liam's youth, highlighting the atrocity of tearing away a 5-year-old child from his family, let alone tearing away people from their families at all. And in light of this image going viral, there were several crafters who saw this as an opportunity to capitalize, to make crochet patterns of Liam's blue bunny hat and sell it without any word of where the profits will be going. Now, just because there's no disclosure on where profits are going doesn't mean that they're not being donated. But if personal profit was the intention, that is absolutely inappropriate. It's unacceptable. And about the hats, I know there's a pattern on Ravelry for sale with all of the proceeds being donated. This is good. I know there are people helping buy this pattern for others who can't afford it, so more money can be raised. Also good. What's not great is the people exploiting the situation for personal gain by selling similar patterns and finished hats without donating any of the funds. If people want to knit hats, let them. I know the need to feel productive while also trying to remain semi-calm. Knitting is great for this, and it's damn cold out for everyone protesting, so you're getting a warm hat and a nod to the other makers. Activism doesn't look the same for everyone, and that is okay. I will also add, I'm sharing this with care, not to argue. Thoughtful engagement is welcome. Comments that dismiss lived experiences or turn this into a debate about whether harm exists will be removed/blocked. I'm not tolerating bullying or racism on my page. It's so sad, I feel, that Autumn has to put that disclaimer at the end. Do not dismiss lived experiences. Do not turn this into a debate. Listen. No justice, no peace. Under Tian's post about the hats being performative, Chicken Coop Dye Works comments, a friend of mine said that making the red hats might be healing for people traumatized by what is happening in Minnesota. Frankly, I hope that is not the case. There should be no healing until this shit stops. There should be no healing until ISIS disbanded. And there should be no healing until this administration is held accountable for all the atrocities it has inflicted on its citizens and the world. Loss in resistance power. This statement that knitting is resistance, knitting is joy, does tend to get thrown around a lot, and I do think the meaning gets diluted at times. During both world wars, knitting was a form of espionage. Crafters would use knit and purl stitches to embed hidden codes via this binary system. Wearing knitwear was not this overt flagging of allyship the way that it is now, but it was meant to be subtle. It was intended to be worn inconspicuously so as to smuggle information. Crafters were not knitting solely for enjoyment. They were silent observers of enemy behavior, and they utilized the stereotype that knitting is soft and domestic, because nobody would suspect that the cute granny knitting in the park was secretly a spy working for the resistance. But nowadays, in the age of digital tech, we're not embedding our hats with code. When we have all the world's resources at our fingertips, the question is, what further information can we convey apart from solidarity with these hats? For anyone who tries to reference knitting as resistance from World War II in defense of the hats, the actual resistance was from the messages hidden in the patterns. Knitting was just the vehicle used because it's what they had. If your resistance is only this hat, then you have not actually accomplished anything except make a hat. To the people saying knitting is resistance, there are several infamous knitters, and we all know some personally, who are major bigots. To the people saying symbols matter, what did posting a black square do for black folks? Remember when Congress knelt and wore kente cloth? To the people saying, I want people to know I'm one of the good ones, ding ding ding, and by people, we know you mean other white people. Because me and my kinfolk already know who we can trust. Broadly speaking, knitting is resistance. It is true in that it rejects capitalism and fast fashion, and it promotes personal expression and labor as enjoyment rather than financial incentive. Hidden nuance, it's not just the act of crafting itself, it's the content in which you craft, it's why you craft, and what your projects say. This leads to the next subtopic, which is the reductionism of visual symbols. Another piece of criticism that the Pussy Hats received was that it was non-inclusive, because a pink hat named after female genitalia can be seen as trans-inclusive or racist because it's predominantly cis white female bodies that have pink vulvas. A visual symbol is always going to be reductionist in that sense because any one image, any one flag is not going to fully encompass the community that it represents, the history that it represents. Pride flags, for example, there are never going to be as many colors as there are genders and sexual identities. And with the Melt the Ice hat, it's not got its history written on it. So there's this question, how many hat wearers actually understand the political context behind it? The thing with semiotics is that you can read an image so far, you could eventually reach some sort of problematic conclusion or interpretation. A lot of people are criticizing the color choice of the hat, for instance, because red is MAGA and they don't want to wear it and be mistaken as a white supremacist. Others are saying the whole point is to reclaim the color red and that by adopting it, it weakens the symbolic power it has for MAGA. So by condensing all that context, all that history and symbolism into one item, is it perhaps superficializing it? And we should also ensure that the connotations of the hat are widely understood as well, because that's important knowledge. Finally, within the pessimistic perspective is this notion that allyship does not need a signal. If you feel the need to have a visual cue in order to flag that you're one of the good ones, chances are you're not putting in the true work that makes you out to be trustworthy, because actions should speak louder than a hat.
We don't need a uniform for the rebellion. The time for wearing matching outfits to bring awareness is long gone. We are all aware. We need to be acting.
This makes me think back to the whole performative male criticism, and I want to reiterate again, I don't care how men or anybody chooses to express themselves as long as they don't do it with ill intent. The bandwagon of calling any femme-presenting or alternative-looking man performative stems from this observation of how certain male sex offenders will dress a certain way, present themselves a certain way in order to seem trustworthy. Further, perpetrators, Spencer sins, just to name one, were very readily forgiven because they were stylish or conventionally attractive. Similarly, in the goth community, there's been a rising issue of conservative individuals taking on a goth aesthetic so as to infiltrate the community and spread far-right rhetoric, which goes directly against goth values. In that vein, what does a red hat promise? Before we go into the more positive viewpoints around the hat, I want to share one more post made by Tian. It's not about the red hat. Knit and crochet whatever you want. The problem with the red hat is, when did it become unacceptable for you? Think about that for a second. Seeing these stupid red hats and thin justification made it crystal clear exactly when state-sanctioned murder became a problem for you, when they went too far. Many of y'all have never posted anything, not about Gaza, Sudan, George, Brianna, Keith, because you're not political. Knitting isn't political, just shut up and knit, right? Bet. But as soon as it was someone that looked like you, it could be you, you got real scared. You have to speak up. Not no other time, but now. Because if they could do it to a white woman and then a white man, gasp, they could do it to you too. Clutch pearls. This is not the America I know. Really, Sherlock. Newsflash, it's the exact America every person who is not white knows, Becky. But you never saw that. You don't see a lot of things. Do you not see me? That I and people like me are humans? You don't see color. You've told me that many times. And the red hats made it super clear you only see whiteness. Now, I know you're gonna come in the comments with righteous indignation about me being divisive. I have time today. I implore you to go journal. Get in your group chats, sit with that feeling you have right now, and figure it out with your people and not in my comments. This is not a safe space for you. Again, I have time today. Because the reality is, once the direct threat is no longer on you and at your door, you'll be gone. You won't be here fighting with us, and that red hat will be with the safety pins and pink hats. Wait, what happened to the pink hats? Why do you need a new/different symbol/uniform? It's confusing to keep up with the outfits. Anyways, when you're gone, I'll still hear black. I can't shed my blackness. I can't never be privileged enough to sit it out. Danger and threats are never not close. So when I say I am not a safe space, listen. Not the type of I'm listening and learning from 2016 and 2020 where you literally did anything but listen and learn. I mean the type of listen and learn that will keep you safe. So Stash Charlotte is a textile store in North Carolina, and they are selling the Melt the Ice pattern along with discounted red yarn. On their Instagram page, they share a DM from somebody who expresses a similar sentiment as what we just previously discussed. I have to be really honest, I don't feel like your Melt the Ice craft along is doing anything to actually help anyone being impacted by ice here in Charlotte or anyone in the US right now. People don't need more virtue signaling by wearing red hats. Crafting without direct action and support in your communities is not enough, especially when you're selling Melt the Ice red yarn with no mention of those profits going anywhere back into the community. And they respond, the hat may seem trivial and performative to you, but I know that seeing them is giving solace to the frightened. It tells them that they aren't alone and that they have support in the community. It's also a signal to like-minded folks that they too aren't alone. You speak of direct action. What does that look like? Are we storming the barricades? Is that the minimum before we take any action? There is no perfect action, and we need to stop sitting on the couch waiting for it. We need to stop arguing with each other over whether we're passing each other's litmus tests. We need to support whatever is being done, even if it isn't revolutionary enough for some. Our power comes from the accumulation of many actions, whether marching in demonstration, posting on social media, or simply wearing the hat. We are where we are today because we have been so busy judging and gatekeeping each other that we can't get our collective shit together enough to fight for our democracy. You are upset that we're selling yarn with no mention of those profits going anywhere back into the community. Bless your heart. We have been supporting refugee and immigrant services in Charlotte for years, before the current ICE atrocities. We don't wear it as a badge and spam it all over social media because that is virtue signaling. You aren't in our customer database, either by first name or last name, so you've likely never been in the shop. I encourage you to join us on Friday. Come meet us and the other like-minded crafters who will be there. We love to share our plans and hear about the actions you're taking. And here is a post shared by Reshma Alphys, the owner of Lavender Design. Something has been bugging me and I feel the need to speak about it. This is not because of something directed towards me. It's just from what I have observed on social media. You cannot come onto social media and claim one way of doing something is right or wrong. I mean, you can, but it doesn't make it right. Make the red hat or don't make the red hat. Organizing a nationwide general strike on a certain day and telling people to not go to work, school, or shopping, well, guess what? Not everyone can do that. Some live paycheck to paycheck. Some are critical workers. There are so many small businesses that are struggling to stay open and count on people shopping. To put a blank general statement out, such as no shopping isn't helping anyone. You could say no shopping at big box or large corporations. If you're one of the lucky ones that can do these things, then good on you. A lot aren't. To say those knitting red hats aren't doing anything else and it's performative is also false. Do not make blanket judgments. You don't have access to their call logs or bank statements. You do not know if they have made calls to the representatives. You do not know how much money they've already donated. You do not know if they have family or friends they need to keep safe. You don't know if they've gone to protests. You do not know how they're helping their community. You do not know. What you see on social media isn't the entirety of someone's life. Instead of coming together, these types of statements only puts more of gap between people. These are fucking scary times, people. This is no joke. People are doing the best they can. Educating people on how they can help is good. But do not dictate which method is superior because you deem so. Not everyone is fortunate enough to do every single action. Now, will some be performative? Absolutely. Are some actions more beneficial than others? Absolutely. Are we allowed to have our own opinions? Absolutely. But again, this is social media, and we do not know what happens when we turn off these screens. If you're judging someone purely based off what is being posted on these squares, then in my opinion, you're losing sight of the bigger picture. Resistance takes many shapes and forms. And the earlier post about the DM sent to Stash Charlotte really legitimizes what Reshma says in this post. You don't know what you don't know. That Instagram user didn't know that Stash Charlotte had been donating their profits for years. They've never set foot in that store even. And they made a negative assumption just because they weren't being transparent about it on their social media. Instead of doing something on their own, starting their own campaign, their own fundraiser, speaking on their own platform, they went and left criticism on somebody else's. Not knowing what you don't know also works on the flip side. Maybe a large majority of people at climate protests don't actually give a shit about climate action and they're there to be performative. But when a politician looks out their window and they see a sea of people, they don't know that. They can't differentiate who's there because they care about climate action and who's there to skip school. So even those performative protesters are contributing to the cause just by virtue of being there. If you're doing something to make yourself feel good, you're still doing it. And like Reshma says, just because somebody isn't posting on socials doesn't mean they're not participating. I want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that sometimes anonymity is power. In fact, protesters should be covering their faces. If they want to share something, they should actually wait until they're home safe. It's for their own safety. Another thing I want to mention is that as a public figure, whether you're a business owner, celebrity, YouTuber, it is not always the best choice to share your financial transactions. Lots of resistance occurs under the radar, and that's why it's effective. Yet that we should approach people with skepticism. So for those who prefer to keep their action under wraps, how can they subtly flag to people their allyship? Perhaps a hat? A red one with a tassel, and we can hand out patterns to raise funds? So this is a hot take, and we can agree to disagree. You know that saying that silence is compliance. Silence is siding with the oppressor. I don't necessarily agree. I think willful ignorance and willful inaction is compliance. because action does not have to be loud. And like Reshma said, speaking out on social media doesn't mean anything either. You could be lying about where your profits go. You could also be reposting Instagram stories and doing just that and nothing else. Looking towards the optimistic perspective, I think the most prevalent argument is that it lowers the entry barrier for activism, because art is escapism through which we are able to participate in resistance. Somebody in my comment section said, I've been searching for a way to show my support without hurting my mental health. As much as I do hope that we stay invested, we stay angry, there is a line between maintaining our rage and becoming deeply traumatized by refusing to heal. We should sit with our feelings, yes, but we can only do that to a certain extent before we burn out, which prevents us from doing any activism at all. Oftentimes, when I come across videos of shootings and assaults, I have to scroll. I cannot watch that. That does not mean I'm not outraged or I'm not participating. I'm so outraged, but I cannot participate if I'm suicidal. We need to stay emotionally invested, but not to the extent where we are forcing harm upon ourselves. The funny thing is that we are all spending time debating hats and appropriate action instead of debating people whose minds we need to change. This is pointless infighting. Make a hat or don't, but do something real. Also, take care of yourself. Soothe your heart so you can keep fighting. PTSD is real. Rage causes autoimmune conditions. Trigger warnings are needed when I wake up to videos of innocent people being murdered in the streets. Action, not infighting. Collaboration, not criticism. There was this Instagram reel that recently went viral, and it was like, I would go vegan, but cheese. And the response is, so do it. Go vegan, but cheese. And it sparked this huge wave of realization that we don't have to be pure, we don't have to do it all, we do what we can, we do what we're willing, and we leave a little bit for ourselves. And that little bit we save with ourselves is an investment for being able to do more later down the line. Incentivizing donations. There's not only individuals who can't do anything further, there's those who won't. There's those who aren't willing unless they get something out of it for themselves. There's likely people buying this hat who would have done nothing at all if not for it. Having a project to make and a hat to show for it is what ultimately won them over. The pessimistic view is like, why are you only willing to participate when there's something in it for you, when there's literally lives at stake, when there's people that are dying? And this I resonate with, that exasperation. The optimistic view is that even if there's transaction fees, even if the money gets there slower and we have to hand out something in return, it's still money. It's not exactly altruistic, but it's still support objectively. And this is what people mean when they say, by any means necessary, which I also resonate with. Can I be honest? I went to a fundraising event the other week. If it weren't for that event, I would not have given any of my money. I would not even have learned about that nonprofit. But because there was a get-together, there was a show, there were raffle prizes, I was able to see some amazing performers. I learned about the nonprofit, and I now know that it's one that I can trust, and I made a friend. And in that sense, incentivizing donations is also fostering community. We have seen people do amazing things for charity. Do you remember last year when there was a group of Welsh drag queens who participated in a rugby match to raise money for charity? And it created a lot of positive publicity. I do hope that we can keep finding creative ways to incentivize financial aid. If you are a crafter, you can have your own raffle, you can sell your own patterns. If you have any more ideas on how you can fundraise with art, please leave them down in the comments. Another way that it incentivizes donations is that it reduces decision fatigue. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations out there. Each one has different members, different ways of operation, different priorities. Which ones can I trust? How much money should I donate? When you buy the Melt the Ice pattern, you're also paying for the delegation of those tasks. Another plus is that this hat is a good gateway into political discourse. This hat links back to so many important conversations about critical race theory, representational politics, and also, yes, performative activism. I think it really helps people see historical parallels as well as the correlation between art and resistance. For fiber arts influencers, it's a way to talk about the issue without deviating too much from their content and losing a large portion of their audience. And I don't mean that as in like losing numbers, losing subscribers. I mean that as in losing viewer retention, which means people are not willing to listen to the politics because they don't see a correlation that directly relates to them and their interests. Because there's a large group of people who still think that knitting and crafting in general is apolitical. As soon as a fiber artist speaks up about social justice, there's a lot of comments that are like, why are you talking about politics? This is a craft channel. I came here for fun and whimsy, and you're being whiny about the political state of the world. I'm unfollowing. There is a reason why so many creatives are outspoken about social justice. Art has always been political. Artists have been channeling their feelings of social injustice into their work for God knows how long. Why do you think Alexandria Massey is crocheting her birth control information sheet? Don't act surprised when it's the artists you follow who are the first to speak up. And if you are blocking influencers for being political, and it seems that everywhere you turn, the celebrities, the YouTubers you follow are talking about social justice, and you're pissed because you can't seem to escape it, good. With this hat, there is finally an opportunity to get politically disengaged individuals to understand why they should be engaged, to understand the politics behind their craft. We can actually discuss this intersection in a way that will interest them, thereby fighting against ignorance, fostering participation. Let's talk about internationality real quick. I am not based in the US, and I do think there's a layer of dissonance affecting foreign perspectives. Due to our geographical location where we cannot physically protest on the streets of Minnesota, and we are also being affected by our own national politics, namely, we are seeing a similar rise in conservatism. Providing funds, whether or not it's via this melt the ice pattern, is probably the best thing we can do within our limited sphere of influence. Personally, I do think that I feel more engaged in American politics the more parallels I see across governments. I think it's amazing that this pattern has reached an international audience. I do think seeing a red hat somewhere overseas is a very powerful symbol because it goes to show that it's gaining global support. Okay, viewpoints aside, let's look at the numbers. As of now, the hat has raised over $650,000 for immigrant protection groups. You can hate the hats or not, you cannot deny those numbers. And the fight is ongoing. Yes, the hat could have came sooner, but it's here now. And if nothing else, the hat is a hat. It's gonna keep someone warm. It's freezing in Minnesota. There's actually been calls for people to craft and or donate balaclavas in order to keep protesters warm and anonymous. What do you guys think about this hat making a comeback? Is it as powerful as it was in the 1940s? Have we diluted it into something aesthetic and performative? Is it bringing more light to current issues or taking away from it? Is it incentivizing or de-incentivizing further activism? Is it something that is even comparable to the pink pussy hats or the blue bracelets? Again, I don't think any of these perspectives mean to say that we cannot participate in visual protest, that we cannot craft in times of turmoil, right? This is not a false dilemma that a lack of nuance makes it out to be. You can make the hat and donate your money. You can protest and donate and not wear the hat and still be participating just as much. There are many forms of activism, but if we are only willing to accept the most ideal, the most altruistic, then so many people will simply not do anything at all. Perfection does not exist because there will always be something better that you can do. Let's remember not to take things at face value and jump to negative assumptions as soon as something isn't immediately disclosed. These days, it seems that we ostracize each other not even because of conflicting values, but because of different ways in expressing the same values. Like I said, I'm gonna make a broader video about like whataboutism and the policing of activism. So like when somebody says I like pancakes and everyone's like, oh, you hate waffles, but I think it's gotten even worse nowadays. So let's keep in mind, ultimately, we're standing for the same thing. Me personally, I'm not gonna make the hats. I prefer donating directly. That doesn't mean I take issue with anybody wearing the hat or not wearing it, as long as it's not impeding you from doing more stuff, if you can do more stuff. And if your allies are doing things with good intentions, but you feel that what they're doing is counterproductive, instead of ostracizing them, try to have a discussion. Try and learn from each other. If there's something that you did instead of making the hat that you feel proud of, please share your experience in the comments. It's not virtue signaling because I am asking you to do it. Share your experience, share your stories. Let's bounce ideas off each other and find allies that we can work with. Last disclaimer, do not send hate to any of the creators I featured, even if you don't agree with them. If anything, go to the creators that you do agree with and show them some love and support. My commentary videos are about cultural and political analysis. It is never about hate. In fact, usually the bottom line is decency. Be a decent person. Have compassion, have integrity, have a willingness to admit that you're wrong when you're wrong and learn from those mistakes. It is never about hate. I've left some resources in the description. Thank you so much for watching all the way through, and I will see you soon.